Okay, so you want to build a creator house. Rent a mansion, move in a dozen TikTokers, point some ring lights at them, and watch the views roll in. Simple, right? Here's the thing though. A creator house is basically a hedge fund made of teenagers. You're pooling a bunch of volatile, high-upside, high-risk assets under one roof, betting that their combined output is worth more than the sum of their parts, and praying none of them blow up the whole portfolio by starting a public feud on day 40. And weirdly, that's not even the biggest risk. The biggest risk is that the math actually works. The economics of a creator house genuinely pencil out on paper. Brands love it, platforms love it, the algorithm loves it. And yet the graveyard of collapsed creator houses is enormous. So by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how these houses actually make money, why the math can guarantee a profit and still bankrupt the people running it, and why a creator house isn't really a content business. It's a real estate business wearing a content business's clothes. Let's start with what a creator house actually is, because most people picture the wrong thing. This isn't roommates who happen to be influencers. A creator house is an operating company. Someone, usually a management group or a media company, signs a lease on a property, moves in 8 to 20 creators, and treats the house itself as a content factory. The creators live there, sometimes rent-free, sometimes for a cut of their earnings, and in exchange the house produces a constant stream of collaborative content, cross-promotion, and brand deals that no single creator could land alone. Think of it like a mall. One creator alone is a corner store. Put 15 creators under one roof and suddenly you're a mall, and malls can negotiate anchor tenant deals that corner stores never could. Creator houses come in roughly 3 tiers, and they're 3 completely different businesses wearing the same aesthetic. The bottom tier is the DIY house. A few mid-tier creators, combined following in the low millions, split a rental in LA or Miami for somewhere around $8,000 to $15,000 a month. No production staff, no legal team, just creators splitting content duties and hoping the algorithm cooperates. The middle tier is the funded house, and this is where most of the famous names sit. A management company signs the lease, typically on a property running $20,000 to $40,000 a month, hires a small production team, and recruits creators specifically for their combined audience overlap. The top tier is the studio house, and these are essentially content studios disguised as homes. Multiple properties, full production crews, in-house editors, brand partnership teams, sometimes north of $200,000 a month in overhead. That's the tier that made headlines, and it's also the tier that produced the most spectacular collapses. Now here's where it gets interesting because the money coming in doesn't come from one place, it comes from 4 places stacked on top of each other, and each one has a completely different margin profile. The first is platform payouts, TikTok's creator fund, YouTube AdSense, that kind of thing. This is the smallest slice, and honestly it's almost a rounding error. Industry estimates have put typical creator fund payouts somewhere around 2 to 4 cents per thousand views, which means a video with 10 million views might generate $300 split across everyone who touched it. That's not a business, that's pocket change. The second stream is brand deals, and this is where the real money lives. A house with combined reach in the tens of millions can package a single sponsored post across 8 or 10 creators simultaneously, and brands will pay a premium for that kind of saturated, synchronized reach. Individual deals that might run $2,000 to $5,000 per creator suddenly become house-wide packages worth $50,000 to $100,000. Because the brand isn't buying one creator's audience, they're buying an entire ecosystem's attention in the same week. The third stream is merchandise and personal brand extensions. Think clothing lines, sold not to the world but to each creator's individual fan base, with the house acting as a built-in cross-promotion engine. And the fourth stream, the one nobody talks about, is the management cut itself. The company running the house typically takes anywhere from 20 to 50% off the top of everything, in exchange for housing, production, and brand negotiation. That's the actual business model. The house isn't monetizing content. The house is monetizing proximity. But let's talk about the costs because this is where the guaranteed math starts to wobble. Rent and utilities on a 12-bedroom mansion with enough space for a studio setup can run $30,000 to $60,000 a month depending on the market. Production staff, videographers, editors, a social media manager or 2, that's another $15,000 to $30,000. Then there's the stuff nobody budgets for, security, because famous teenagers attract obsessive fans and occasionally actual stalkers. Legal fees because you are now the employer, landlord, and manager of a group of people who are often minors or barely adults, which means contracts, guardianship agreements, and liability insurance that would make a normal landlord's eyes water. Added up, and a mid-tier funded house can be burning $80,000 to $150,000 a month before a single brand deal closes. Here's the metaphor that makes this click. Running a creator house is like running an airline. Massive fixed costs whether or not the plane is full, and the entire business lives or dies on load factor, in this case, how much of that content output actually converts into brand revenue this month. So how do these houses actually engineer retention and engagement, because that's the entire game? The algorithm rewards consistency and collaboration, so houses design their entire operation around producing collaborative content daily, sometimes multiple times a day. Cross-posting, duets, house challenges, roommate drama content, all of it is engineered, sometimes literally scripted, to keep each creator's individual audience discovering the other creators in the house. It's the same logic Disney Channel used in the 2000s, cross-pollinate the fan base across multiple shows so a fan of one becomes a fan of five. The difference is Disney owned the intellectual property. A creator house owns none of it. Every single asset, the follower count, the personal brand, the audience trust, walks out the door the moment a creator leaves, and creators leave constantly. And that brings us to why some of these houses fail despite the math technically guaranteeing a profit. Here's the uncomfortable truth. On paper, a well-run funded house with even modest brand deal flow can be profitable within 6 to 12 months. The math works. So why do so many collapse in under 2 years? Because the model has a structural flaw that no spreadsheet captures, which is that the entire asset base can walk out the front door at any time with zero notice and often does. Unlike a factory, you can't insure against a teenager's mood. When one creator with outsized influence leaves a house, industry observers have noted the group's combined engagement can drop by double-digit percentages almost overnight, because algorithms reward the network effect of the group, and network effects work in reverse just as violently as they work forward. It's less like owning a factory and more like owning a boy band. Remember what happened the moment one member of a hit group decided to go solo. The other four didn't just lose a fifth of the audience. They sometimes lost the whole thing because the audience wasn't following for people plus one person. They were following a specific chemistry that doesn't exist without all five in the room. The common failure reasons stack up in a pretty predictable order once you've seen a few of these collapse. First, overexpansion. Management companies see early brand deal success and immediately sign a bigger mansion, add more creators, hire more staff, betting that scale multiplies revenue linearly. It doesn't. Adding creator number 15 doesn't add 15% more brand value, because audience overlap increases and marginal reach decreases, while costs increase in a straight line. Second, internal conflict, and this one is almost inevitable when you put a dozen 20-year-olds who are suddenly earning 5 and 6 figures a month under one roof with no real management experience among them. Disputes over who gets credit, who gets which brand deals, who's actually pulling their weight on content. These aren't just interpersonal problems, they're revenue problems, because a house with visible internal drama becomes a liability brands don't want attached to their name, at least not the kind of drama that isn't manufactured on purpose. Third, and this is the quiet killer, is that creators figure out the math themselves. Once a creator with 3 million followers realizes the house is taking 30 or 40% of their brand deals in exchange for a bedroom and a ring light, and they could just rent their own apartment and negotiate deals directly, the incentive to stay evaporates. The house needs the creators far more than the creators need the house, and that power imbalance eventually corrects itself, usually messily and usually on camera. Let's actually run the numbers on a profitability scenario, because this is where it gets genuinely fascinating. Take a mid-tier funded house, 10 creators, combined monthly overhead of $100,000 including rent, staff, and production. If the house lands 4 house-wide brand packages a month at an average of $40,000 each, that's $160,000 in gross brand revenue, plus maybe another $15,000 from platform payouts and merchandise combined. Total revenue, roughly $175,000 against $100,000 in overhead, leaves $75,000 in gross margin before the management company's cut and before paying creators their individual shares. That's a genuinely healthy business, north of 40% margin, which is better than most restaurants, most retail, most small manufacturing businesses will ever see. The problem is that number is wildly unstable month to month. Brand budgets are seasonal, algorithm changes can crater reach overnight, and losing even one high engagement creator can knock that 4-deal months down to 2. A restaurant's 40% margin is durable because the kitchen doesn't quit and start a rival restaurant next door with half your regular customers. So here's the real answer to the question everyone actually wants answered, which is whether creator houses are a good business. And the honest answer is, they're a great business model wrapped around a terrible business asset. The model, pooled audiences, shared production costs, bundled brand deals, that part of the equation is genuinely smart, and it's why brands keep paying premiums to work with houses instead of individual creators. But the asset, human beings with egos, ambitions, and the legal ability to walk out the door tomorrow, is the least stable collateral you could possibly build a company around. It's not a content business, and it's not really a real estate business either, though the lease is often the only contractually binding thing in the entire operation. It's an attention arbitrage business, buying proximity and packaging it faster than the people generating that attention realize what their own leverage is actually worth. And once they do realize it, which they always eventually do, the math that guaranteed the profit is the same math that guarantees the house was only ever going to last as long as nobody in it did the division.